After some deep research, here are 5 terrifying true neighbor horror stories that will haunt your every thought. Filled with ghostly encounters and chilling twists, these tales will keep you on edge and questioning what lurks next door. Prepare yourself for a terrifying ride. A young family had just moved into a charming house nestled in a peaceful, quiet neighborhood. For the first few weeks, everything seemed perfect. The perfect home, the perfect surroundings. But that serenity didn't last long. Late at night, the wife began hearing strange, soft whispers coming from the wall between their bedroom and the neighbor's house. At first, she shrugged it off, assuming it was just the house settling, a natural noise in an old home. But as the days passed, the whispers grew louder and more distinct, unsettling her. One evening, driven by an uneasy feeling, she pressed her ear against the wall. The whispers were unmistakable, and then her name was called. A chill ran down her spine as she heard a chilling laugh following her name. Terrified, she turned to her husband, but he dismissed her concerns. But one night, everything changed. In the dead of night, a loud, violent bang echoed throughout the house, shaking their room. The husband and wife rushed outside, hearts racing, only to find their neighbor standing on their doorstep, white as a ghost, shaking uncontrollably. "I heard the whispers too," the neighbor confessed in a tremulous voice. "It's not just the house. There's something wrong here." The next day, the family's neighbor's house stood eerily empty, with no signs of the family who had lived there just hours before. Their sudden disappearance fueled rumors that the house had once been the site of a gruesome murder many years ago, one so horrifying that it left a lingering presence. No one ever saw the neighbors again, and the house remained abandoned, its walls forever whispering of the horrors that had once transpired. A young couple, eager to start a new chapter in their lives, moved into an old, charming house next to Mrs. Carter, an elderly woman who had lived alone for years. At first, she welcomed them warmly, offering advice about the neighborhood and the house. However, her demeanor shifted when she began warning them to stay away from certain parts of their home, particularly the attic. "Don't go up there," she would say with a strange urgency in her voice. "It's best left undisturbed." One evening, after hearing faint, eerie noises coming from the attic, the husband's curiosity got the better of him. He decided to investigate. As he opened the attic door, an overpowering stench of decay hit him. Inside, he found dust-covered furniture, old clothes, and photographs, remnants of a life long gone. But what unsettled him the most was the sight of fresh footprints leading to a dusty, ancient mirror. Drawn to it, he stared into the mirror and was horrified to see Mrs. Carter's reflection, but with a sinister, twisted smile on her face. He spun around only to find the elderly woman standing right behind him, her voice a whisper. "I warned you," she said coldly. "It's already too late." The next morning, the couple and Mrs. Carter were nowhere to be found. The house stood empty, decaying, as if time had forgotten it. No one dared approach it again, and the story of the cursed neighbor remained a chilling reminder of the darkness that had once lived there. For years, the residents of Maple Street lived in harmony, with nothing out of the ordinary to disturb the quiet neighborhood. That all changed when the Thompson family moved into the house at the end of the street. At first, the Thompsons kept to themselves, blending in with the peaceful surroundings. But it wasn't long before strange occurrences began to unsettle the neighbors. The Thompson children, once seen as normal, began playing outside late into the night. Yet the sounds that filled the air were not the usual laughter of children. Instead, neighbors reported hearing unsettling, bone-chilling screams echoing through the still night. The atmosphere on the street grew tense. Weeks passed, and then one evening, Mrs. Thompson walked into the woods behind their home, never to return. The neighbors were troubled, but unsure of how to intervene, unsure if something sinister was happening, or if it was just another unexplained disappearance. However, the true horror came one fateful night. A loud banging echoed through the neighborhood. The neighbors, fearing the worst, cautiously opened their door to find the Thompson children standing on their doorstep. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide with terror, and their voices trembled as they whispered, "She's back, but she's not the same." The children explained that their mother had returned, but something was horribly different. She had taken over the house, forcing them to play outside every night as part of a twisted, endless game. Desperate and terrified, the children claimed they were prisoners in their own home, unable to escape their mother's haunting control. The next day, the Thompson house was abandoned once again, but this time, something was different. An unnatural chill surrounded the house, a coldness that lingered in the air. The neighbors, afraid of the dark presence that seemed to cling to the house, refused to go near it. To this day, the house on Maple Street remains empty. Some say the spirits of the Thompson family still haunt the street, their screams drifting on the wind at night, a constant reminder of the horrors that unfolded in the house at the end of the road. A young couple, eager for a fresh start, had recently moved into a quaint house in a peaceful suburban neighborhood. The house was everything they had hoped for, charming, cozy, and set in a serene environment. However, it wasn't long before the peace was shattered by strange occurrences. Every night, the wife began to hear the distinct sound of footsteps on the porch, followed by a soft knock on the door. At first, she thought it was her imagination playing tricks on her, but as the nights went on, the sounds persisted. One evening, the husband, now hearing the same noises, suggested they confront whatever or whoever was causing the disturbance. They waited, hearts pounding, and as the knock echoed through the night, they opened the door. Standing in the yard was an elderly woman, her eyes hollow and distant. She simply stared at them before speaking, "He's waiting for you." Then, as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished into the darkness, leaving the couple stunned. The next day, the couple's neighbor, an old man named Mr. Phelps, came to visit them. With a somber expression, he warned them, "The house you live in isn't just haunted. It was once owned by my late wife. She passed away peacefully in her sleep years ago, but every night I still hear her footsteps on my porch. It's her spirit, still searching for me." The couple, shaken and disturbed by the encounter, decided to move out of the house soon after. They never saw Mr. Phelps again. Some say his wife's restless spirit still roams the neighborhood, knocking on doors in search of him, while others claim her footsteps can still be heard on quiet nights, forever seeking the love she once had. The Sanders family had just moved into a charming house on a quiet street, eager to start a new chapter of their lives. They quickly made friends with their neighbor, Mrs. Miller, an elderly woman who had lived on the street for decades. Mrs. Miller was friendly, but had an air of mystery about her. She would often share strange, unsettling stories about the house, but the Sanders, assuming it was just the ramblings of old age, listened politely and dismissed them. However, one evening, their young daughter, Emily, came running downstairs, her face pale and her body trembling. She claimed she had seen a woman standing at the end of the hallway on the second floor, her eyes hollow and dark. Mrs. Miller, who had overheard the commotion, immediately came over and whispered a warning to the family, urging them to stay away from the room above the stairs. That room belonged to the last tenant, Mrs. Miller explained in a hushed tone, a young woman who went mad. She locked herself in there and disappeared. No one knows what happened to her, but they say her spirit is trapped in that room. The Sanders family brushed off her warning, thinking it was just another one of Mrs. Miller's spooky tales. But the very next night, Emily began screaming in terror. The family rushed to her room, where she was shaking uncontrollably, her finger pointed towards the attic door, which had mysteriously swung open. Frozen in fear, the Sanders family realized the truth. The room above was no longer just a room, it was a prison for a restless spirit. That was the night they packed their bags and left the house for good. Mrs. Miller's eerie warning had proven to be more than just a story. The house was haunted, and the woman who had vanished long ago still roamed its halls, never having left. At this point, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping stories. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest content. We appreciate your support.